You have the hands of a pianist and the memory of a military-grade hard drive. Long fingers, thin, without calluses, without scars, without rings, without any mark that would allow someone to identify you in a lineup of suspects. Hands that have never held a weapon, that have never struck a face, that have never carried a kilogram of cocaine, nor counted stacks of bills damp with blood. Clean hands. That is the irony that defines you. You have the cleanest hands in the entire dirtiest criminal organization in the country. And yet, you are, by an abysmal margin, the most dangerous person of all. More than the hitmen with their Barrett rifles in .50 caliber capable of piercing military armor at 1,800 meters. More than the chemists who cook crystal methamphetamine in clandestine laboratories with deficient ventilation and permanent risk of explosion. More than the financial operators who move $400 million annually through a spiderweb of shell. Companies registered in opaque jurisdictions from Panama to the British Virgin Islands. You are more dangerous than all of them because you contain all of them. You are the archivist. You are the living memory of the cartel. Every transaction, every execution, every bribe, every route, every alias, every property, every government contact, every body buried, and every body dissolved. Everything passes through your pianist hands and is recorded in a system you designed yourself, with the meticulousness of a Swiss watchmaker and the paranoia of a Cold War spy. A system that does not exist on any internet server, on any digital cloud, on any hard drive connected to a network. Because you learned long ago that the digital is betrayal disguised as convenience, and that any file that touches an internet connection is a file that already belongs to someone else, to an intelligence agency, to a hacker, to a prosecutor with a court order. Your system is analog, physical, tangible, almost archaic in its conception, but devastatingly effective in its execution. Notebooks, ledgers, folders, maps, printed photographs, documents written by hand in a microscopic calligraphy, you learned to perfect during the 4 years you studied paleography and archival science at university, before life pushed you over a cliff from which you never found the way back. You are 46 years old, and you live in a modest single-story house in a middle-class neighborhood in Culiacan, a house with a small garden where you grow cherry tomatoes and habanero peppers, and a lemon tree that bears acidic and perfect fruit every season. Your neighbors know you as Don Aurelio, a retired accountant who lives on a modest pension and who spends his days reading on his porch and walking an old dog of indefinite breed named Seneca, like the Stoic philosopher, because you believe in Stoicism with the blind faith of a convert. You believe that virtue lies in enduring suffering without complaint and in accepting fate without resistance. And that philosophy has kept you sane during the 19 years you have spent archiving horror, with the same discipline with which others archive electricity bills or medical records. Nobody suspects you. That is your greatest masterpiece, your most refined work of conceptual art, invisibility. You do not drive luxury vehicles, you do not wear designer clothing, you do not frequent expensive restaurants or nightclubs or high-end brothels where mid-level narcos burn through money with the urgency of someone who knows they will probably not live long enough to spend it reasonably. You wear cotton shirts bought at street markets, jeans worn down by legitimate use and not by fashion design, comfortable rubber-soled shoes that make no sound when you walk, which is a characteristic you did not choose by accident but by survival instinct. Because in your world, noise is synonymous with attention, and attention is synonymous with death. Your official bank account has a balance of 64,000 pesos, consistent with your legend as a retired accountant. Your real money, $3,700,000 accumulated over 19 years of service, is distributed across 14 physical hiding places spread across 6 states in the country. Safe deposit boxes in banks under false names backed by fabricated identifications produced by the best forger in northwestern Mexico. sealed paint cans with false bottoms, stored in warehouses rented under the names of people who do not exist. Stacks of bills wrapped in plastic and buried at coordinates. Only you know and that you memorized without ever writing them down, because writing the location of your money would be like writing your own death sentence on a piece of paper and taping it to your front door. It all began 19 years ago in a government office that smelled of old paper and frustrated ambition. You worked as an archivist at the Public Property Registry of the state of Sinaloa, a bureaucratic job that paid 9,000 pesos a month and that consisted of classifying, organizing, digitizing, and safeguarding the property files for all registered real estate in the state. It was an invisible job, the kind of job people mention at parties, and it provokes an uncomfortable silence followed by a change of subject. But you loved it. You loved the order, the taxonomy, the architecture of a well-designed classification system, the almost erotic satisfaction of finding a misplaced file and returning it to its correct spot on the correct shelf, with the correct label, in the correct position. You were extraordinarily good at your job and extraordinarily underpaid for it, which is the exact combination organized crime seeks when it needs to recruit technical talent. Brilliant people, whom the legal system does not offer a path proportional to their ability. One day a man arrived at your office requesting information about a series of rural properties registered under the name of an agricultural company. He was a man in a dark suit, educated voice, impeccable manners, the kind of person who could be a corporate lawyer, or a bank director, or a career politician. He asked for the files, and you gave them to him because it was public information and there was no reason to refuse. 3 days later, he returned. This time he asked for something different. He wanted to know if it was possible to alter a registration date in a property file without the modification being detectable in the system. He did not want you to do it. He clarified with a smile that was almost kind. He only wanted to know if it was theoretically possible. And you, with the suicidal honesty of a technician who cannot resist the temptation to demonstrate his knowledge, explained to him exactly how it would be done. The original paper would have to be replaced by an identical copy printed on paper with the same weight and artificial aging using a solution of concentrated black tea and controlled exposure to ultraviolet light for 48 hours. The ink would have to match the production batch of the era. The official seals would have to be reproduced with a rubber matrix fabricated from a mold of the original seal. And the registrar's signature would have to be forged by someone with training in reverse graphology. You explained all of this with the enthusiasm of a university professor who finally has a student asking interesting questions without realizing that you were dictating your own recruitment, that every word leaving your mouth was a brick in the wall of the cell you would build for yourself over the following 19 years. The man in the suit turned out to be the lead attorney for the organization of Heriberto Lascano Fuentes, known in the narco-trafficking world as the Patriarch, a man who controlled 35% of methamphetamine trafficking into the United States, and who had built a criminal empire with the same strategic vision with which a legitimate businessman builds a franchise, standardizing processes, eliminating inefficiencies, diversifying markets, and above all, documenting absolutely everything. The Patriarch was a man obsessed with record-keeping, with evidence, with institutional memory. He had watched other cartels fall because of disorganization, because of the lack of accounting records, because of the inability to trace their own assets, because of the vulnerability generated by not knowing exactly who owes you what, who paid you how much, who did what and when and where. He needed someone to build the central archive of his organization, someone with technical training in document management, someone meticulous, discreet, invisible. He needed someone exactly like you. The first offer was 50,000 pesos monthly, more than 5 times your salary at the public registry. You said no, not out of morality, but out of fear. The second offer was 80,000 pesos and a veiled threat that was not spoken aloud, but that hung in the air of your office like invisible gas. Señor Lascano values loyalty above all else. He also values memory, and he has a very good memory. He knows where you live. He knows where your sister works. He knows what school your nephew attends. There was no third offer because none was necessary. You accepted the second with your hands trembling and your stomach turned into a knot of acid and resignation. And that night you went to church for the first time in 15 years and knelt before a wooden Christ with peeling paint and asked forgiveness for what you were about to do, knowing that divine forgiveness is a currency that is not accepted when the debt is paid with the lives of others. Your first task was to build the system. You spent 6 months designing an archival architecture that combines professional document management techniques with security protocols inspired by military intelligence manuals you obsessively read in public libraries, and on specialized internet forums where veterans of 3-letter agencies share fragments of operational knowledge with the irresponsibility of someone who believes information wants to be free. The system you created has 5 classification levels. The first level, which you internally designated Surface, contains basic administrative information, payrolls for legal employees, invoices for front companies, lease agreements for properties, tax records fabricated for the consumption of government auditors. This information is stored in conventional metal filing cabinets in the offices of the cartel's legal businesses and can be found by any investigator without causing significant damage because it is designed to appear legitimate and to lead nowhere compromising. The second level, Current, contains the active drug transport routes, shipping calendars, distribution contacts in border cities, and at crossing points into the United States. This information is recorded in notebooks with black synthetic leather covers that are renewed every 90 days. When the period expires, the old notebook is destroyed through controlled incineration, and the relevant information that must be preserved is transferred to the new notebook after being filtered and encoded with a double-layer alphabetic substitution system you invented by combining principles of the Caesar cipher with frequency variations based on Mersenne prime numbers, a system no cryptanalyst would decipher without the key, and the key exists solely in your memory. The third level, Depth, contains the real financial records. Every dollar that enters, every dollar that leaves, every bank account in every country, every transfer, every asset purchase, every investment in real estate, or legitimate businesses, or art, or precious metals. This information is recorded in archive folders stored in 3 different locations that you change every 6 months and that only you know. A hidden compartment behind a false wall in an industrial warehouse, a box buried at 1 meter 20 centimeters deep in a vacant lot whose coordinates you memorized using a mnemonic system based on the opening notes of Beethoven sonatas, and an armored briefcase kept in a bank safe deposit box in Mexico City under a name that does not exist in any civil registry in the country. The fourth level, Abyss, is the most delicate. It contains the records of government corruption. Every purchased official, every police officer on the payroll, every bribed military officer, every compromised judge, every politician who received campaign financing from the cartel, with dates, amounts, payment methods, photographs of the meetings, copies of the deposits, audio recordings in some cases. This information is the cartel's true power, more valuable than the drugs themselves, because drugs are consumed and disappear, but documented corruption is eternal and can be used indefinitely as an instrument of control. A politician who knows that evidence of his link to narco-trafficking exists is a politician who will obey any order with the docility of an animal domesticated by fear. The fifth level has no name. It has no name because naming it would mean acknowledging its existence, and acknowledging its existence is something you try to avoid even in the privacy of your own mind. The fifth level contains the records of the executions, the forced disappearances, the clandestine graves, the kill orders with the coded signature of the person who authorized them. It is the map of the cartel's invisible cemetery, the exact cartography of every body buried or dissolved or incinerated, with dates, locations, names of the victims when known, and physical descriptions when not, names of the executors, methods employed, reasons alleged. It is an archive containing more than 326 entries accumulated over 19 years, and that weighs on your conscience like a concrete building on a crystal column. Your daily routine has the cadence of a monastic ritual. You wake at 6 in the morning, brew coffee in an Italian stainless steel stovetop coffee maker, take Seneca for a walk through the quiet streets of your neighborhood, while you memorize the information updates you received the night before through a communication system you designed specifically for this purpose. Messages written in invisible ink on the pages of used books that a courier leaves for you at a second-hand bookshop where you have an open account under the name Don Aurelio. The messages are revealed by heating the paper with a hairdryer at medium temperature. They appear as light brown text on the printed page. And once read and memorized, they are destroyed by submerging the page in a 30% hydrogen peroxide solution that bleaches the invisible ink and the printed ink alike, leaving a white and illegible page that you then shred in a P7 crosscut paper shredder, the highest security classification in document destruction, which reduces the paper to particles less than 1 millimeter wide that you disperse into 3 different garbage bags, deposited in 3 containers located in 3 different neighborhoods across the city. It sounds excessive. It is exactly what is necessary. Because in this business, the difference between paranoia and prudence is the difference between staying alive and turning up in a grave with your hands severed and your tongue ripped out, which is what happened to the last man who handled sensitive information for the cartel before you arrived. An accountant who made the mistake of storing files on a USB drive that he left in the pocket of a suit jacket. He took to the dry cleaner, where a curious employee plugged it into a computer, saw things he should not have seen, called an anonymous tip line, and triggered a chain of events that ended with the accountant dead, the dry cleaner employee dead, and the patriarch convinced he needed someone better, someone who understood that information management is not an administrative job, but an art of war. The years pass with the leaden uniformity of a perpetually overcast sky. You record the cartel's rise from a regional organization to a transnational consortium with a presence in 16 countries. You record the territorial wars that left hundreds dead, whose identities you archived with the same emotional neutrality with which an entomologist pins butterflies. You record the alliances and the betrayals, the pacts with Colombian cartels and with Chinese distributors of chemical precursors, the agreements with Central American gangs for the control of migration routes that also function as trafficking routes, the arrangements with European organized crime cells for cocaine distribution through Mediterranean ports. You record the birth of the patriarch's children, their lavish baptisms, their first communions financed with money laundered through charitable foundations that on paper help orphaned children and in reality exist only to generate tax-deductible receipts. You record the death of the patriarch's rivals, some executed with the bloody spectacle of a public declaration, and others disappeared with the surgical subtlety of an operation that leaves no visible scar on the social fabric. You record everything. You do not opine, you do not judge, you do not weep. You are the archivist. Your function is not to feel, it is to document. Your function is to guarantee that the cartel's memory survives any individual, including the patriarch himself, because organizations that depend on the memory of a single man die when that man dies, and the patriarch wants his empire to outlive him the way the pyramids outlived the pharaohs. The day the system cracks does not arrive with an explosion, but with a whisper. A nephew of the patriarch, a 27-year-old named Rodrigo, who holds a mid-level position in the cartel's structure, and who possesses the genetic arrogance of someone born into a cradle of power without having done anything to deserve it, contacts you directly to request access to the 4th-level archive, the one containing government corruption records. He wants the names of the judges on the cartel's payroll, because he has a friend imprisoned for a homicide case, unrelated to the organization, and he wants to use the cartel's influence to free him as a personal favor. You explain, with the pedagogical patience you would use with a child, trying to stick his fingers into an electrical socket, that the access protocol for the 4th level requires direct authorization from the Patriarch, and that no request is processed without in-person verification, at a secure location, with 48 hours of advance notice. Rodrigo becomes enraged. He calls you a bureaucrat, calls you a useless old man, tells you he is the Patriarch's blood, and that his blood is authorization enough. You do not raise your voice. You repeat the protocol. Rodrigo leaves slamming, a door so hard it makes the cherry tomatoes in the garden tremble. 3 weeks later, you learn that Rodrigo, unable to access your archive, attempted to directly bribe a federal judge whose information he obtained from a source less reliable and less precise than you, and that the judge in question was not on the cartel's payroll, but on the Attorney General's office payroll as a cooperating witness, and that the bribery attempt was recorded in audio and video by an electronic surveillance team that had spent 6 months monitoring that judge precisely in the hope that someone from the cartel would attempt to contact him. The recording triggers a federal investigation that expands like an oil stain on water, reaching within weeks financial operators, regional distributors, plaza bosses, and eventually the Patriarch's inner circle. You feel the tremor before anyone tells you anything. You feel it in the frequency of messages that stop arriving at the bookshop, in the calls that do not happen, in the operational silence that settles like a layer of ice over the surface of the organization. A silence you know well because you have recorded it before in your archive. Every time the cartel enters containment mode in the face of an external threat, communications are reduced to a minimum. Operators disperse, assets are moved, properties are emptied, evidence is destroyed. Except that this time, the evidence is you. You are the living archive, the walking encyclopedia of the cartel. And in a crisis scenario, there exist only 2 possible fates for an archive of your nature: to be protected as the organization's most valuable asset, or to be destroyed as its greatest vulnerability. You do not know which of the 2 fates the Patriarch has chosen for you, and the uncertainty settles in your chest like an animal with claws that breathes at your same rhythm and squeezes a little tighter every time you exhale. You search your house for surveillance devices with a thoroughness that borders on obsessive disorder. You dismantled the lamps piece by piece, opened the outlet boxes with a precision screwdriver, inspected the interior of the rooftop water cistern with a handheld flashlight, felt every centimeter of the seams of the sofa cushions, searching for transmitters the size of a grain of rice. You found nothing. But that does not calm you, because the absence of detectable surveillance can mean they are not watching you, or it can mean they are watching you with technology that exceeds your detection capability. And both possibilities are equally terrifying. The visit arrives on a Friday at 11 at night. It is not a black Suburban with tinted windows like in the movies. It is a gray Volkswagen Jetta, anodyne, invisible, the kind of vehicle an insurance salesman would drive without shame. The cartel's attorney steps out, the same man who recruited you 19 years ago, now aged, his hair completely white and an expression on his face that is not threatening but fatigued, the expression of a man who has seen too many endings and who knows this is one more. He sits on your porch, accepts the coffee you offer, scratches Seneca behind the ears with a tenderness that seems genuine, and then tells you, looking at the cherry tomatoes in your garden as if they were the most interesting thing in the world, that the Patriarch was detained that morning in a joint operation between the Navy, the Attorney General's office, and the United States Drug Enforcement Administration. That 19 members of the leadership were captured simultaneously across 5 states. That the cartel's financial assets are being frozen by court order in 9 countries. that Rodrigo, the nephew, negotiated a deal with the prosecutors and is handing over everything he knows in exchange for a reduced sentence, and that the patriarch, from his cell, sent one final message for you through a chain of 3 intermediaries that ends with this man sitting on your porch, a message consisting of 4 words: protect the archive, always. He does not tell you to flee, he does not tell you to destroy anything. He tells you to protect. Because the patriarch, even from a maximum security cell, thinks 20 years ahead, knows that empires fall and are rebuilt, that men go to prison and come out, that organizations are dismantled and regroup. But only if the memory survives, only if someone somewhere preserves the complete map of the labyrinth, so that when the time comes to rebuild it, the pieces fit. You remain sitting on the porch long after the gray Jetta disappears into the night. Seneca sleeps at your feet. The crickets sing with that cosmic indifference nature has toward human catastrophes. You think about the 326 names in the 5th level of your archive. The dead without graves, the mothers without answers, the children who grew up never knowing where their father is buried. You think about the fact that those names exist solely because you recorded them, because without your archive, those people would not even be a statistic. They would be void, the absolute nothingness that violence produces when nobody documents it. You think about the fact that you are 46 years old and that you could disappear tonight, activate one of the 3 evacuation plans you have had prepared for 12 years, collect the money from the 14 hiding places, cross 3 borders with 3 different passports, and end up in a European city where nobody knows you, and where you could live the rest of your life as an anonymous retiree who reads Stoic philosophy in sidewalk cafes, and who never, ever tells anyone that in another life he was the custodian of the darkest secrets of an organization that killed more people than he could count. Although he did count them all, one by one, in the microscopic calligraphy of a man who confused order with virtue, and who discovered too late that archiving evil does not make you neutral. It makes you complicit. It makes you the notary of hell, the scribe of the apocalypse, the man who assigned a file number to every atrocity, and who in doing so gave it a structure that made it more efficient and therefore more lethal. You think about all of this, and then you think about an alternative that produces a vertigo so intense you feel the porch tilting beneath you, like the deck of a ship in a storm. You could hand over the archive, not to the cartel, not to the prosecutor's office, which is infiltrated and corrupted, and which would use your information to negotiate power and not to deliver justice. You could hand it over to the mothers, to the organizations that search for the disappeared, to the women who walk through the desert with shovels and metal rods probing the earth, searching for the bones of their children. You could give them the map. You could tell them where the bodies are. You could return 326 names to 326 families that have spent years screaming into a void that you could fill with a single delivery. The idea terrifies you and illuminates you at the same time, like a bolt of lightning inside the skull. You know that doing it would cost you your life. You know that the cartel, even dismantled, has enough tentacles to find you in any corner of the planet and make you pay for the betrayal, with a suffering designed to last days. You know you are not a hero, that you never were, that you are a meticulous coward who chose the safety of the archive over the decency of denunciation for 19 consecutive years. But you also know that the archive has changed you in ways you did not anticipate when you accepted the job, that every name you recorded left an imprint somewhere in your brain that you cannot format, that the 326 dead live inside you. In a way that is not metaphorical but neurological, etched into the synapses of your memory like grooves in a vinyl record that spins without stopping and that plays the same song of horror every night when you close your eyes. You look at Seneca asleep at your feet, with that animal peace that is only possible when one has no awareness of evil, and you whisper to him, "What would a Stoic do?" But you already know the answer because you read it years ago in a translation of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations that you keep underlined on your nightstand. That which is not good for the hive is not good for the bee. You stand up. You enter the house. You walk to the end of the hallway where there is a door that looks like a closet door, but that conceals a space measuring 2 meters by 1.5 meters, with walls reinforced with lead sheeting to block any electromagnetic signal. A space without windows, without visible electrical connections, lit by a rechargeable battery lamp, and that contains a table, a chair, and the master copy of the 5th level of your archive. 19 black cover. Notebooks stacked with the solemnity of sacred texts, each one labeled with a year, each one containing the names, the dates, the coordinates, the circumstances of every death you documented with those pianist hands that never stained themselves with blood, but that recorded every drop spilled with a precision that now, under the yellow light of the battery lamp, strikes you as monstrous. You sit before the notebooks. You touch them with your fingertips the way one touches a wound of one's own. And in the silence of that shielded room, in the solitude of that night that smells of cold coffee and cherry tomatoes and 19 years of silent complicity, you make the first decision that is genuinely yours since that afternoon in the public registry office, when you explained to a stranger in a dark suit how to forge a document and sealed your fate with the same meticulousness with which now, if courage does not abandon you before dawn, you could attempt to amend it, knowing that the amendment will probably cost you your life, but that the alternative, to continue being the archivist of hell until hell archives you, is a price that your soul, if you still have one left beneath the 19 layers of horror you stacked on top of it, can no longer pay.